Hello and welcome to another Science 9 crash course. In this episode, we're going to talk about what us as humans can do to help preserve biodiversity. As we have discussed in the previous episode, humans have had a significant impact on our environment. So the question is, what can we do to help preserve biodiversity? One thing that we have done is created zoos. Zoos originally started out as a place to store exotic animals to be viewed by the public. Today they are much more than that. Zoos serve as an educational institution to teach young people and adults about biodiversity. Zoos across the world are networked in an attempt to preserve the world's biodiversity and the genetic variation of different species. Zoos also support and initiate research into preserving biodiversity. Zoos have been primarily concerned with animal life, but what about plants? Seed banks have been established to gather seed collections from plant species that are threatened by extinction. Seeds are stored at -20 degrees Celsius, and a few seeds of each sample are germinated every 10 years. The sample should then last for a couple centuries. It is also very important to preserve genetic variation and diversity, so some seeds are collected from the forest floor. The largest seed bank in the world is the Royal Botanic Gardens in London, England. Their goal is to gather 10% of the world's seed-bearing plants. Zoos and seed banks are great at helping to preserve genetic and biological diversity. However, because of globalization, we need to have a more global effort to help preserve biodiversity. So countries around the world have drawn up global treaties to help protect endangered plants and animals. One of these treaties back in 1975, called the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, or CITES, was aimed at protecting endangered species from being imported and exported. This law makes it illegal to buy or sell endangered species or parts of endangered species such as rhino horns or elephant tusks. Also in 1992, 180 countries signed the Convention on Biodiversity and have agreed to set up protected areas for threatened and endangered species. In order to set up these protected areas, there needs to be a classification system put in place in order to monitor these species. The IUCN Red List, which was founded in 1964, is the world's most comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of different species around the world. Species are classified by the IUCN Red List into 9 different groups. The first category is called extinct, which means that no known individuals are remaining. The next category is called extinct in the wild, which means that it is only known to survive in captivity. And then there is critically endangered, which means that it is at an extremely high risk of extinction in the wild. And next we have endangered, which means that it is at high risk of extinction in the wild. Vulnerable, which means it's at high risk of endangerment in the wild. Near threatened, which means it is likely to become endangered in the near future. And lastly, least concern. This is the lowest risk. This means that the organism is widespread and abundant throughout the world. Now let's look at some statistics from the Red List. A list was published back in 2012 where they examined and assessed a total of 63,837 species. In this report, 3,947 were described as critically endangered and 5,766 as endangered. And more than 10,000 species are listed as vulnerable. Also in this report, nearly 2,000 species were added, with 4 species added to the extinct list and 2 to the rediscovered list. With all of these species at risk, hopefully you can make a difference in the world. Thanks for listening.